And welcome everybody again once more. And today, it is on Thursday evenings, we have our Gita Satsang where we take a sloka, stanza from the Gita, and we use it as our theme. And I'd like this evening to speak about something I think is really quite important. And it's something it's a quality, you might say, or a bad habit that we have that if we were to be able to overcome it, we'd find remarkable changes beginning to take place in our lives. And I think everybody wants to change. I mean, I think that's a universal. If you're here this evening, people, now not everybody wants to change, but those people who are, you could say, come onto the spiritual path, become disciples, there's really this deep desire to change and to make our lives better. We all want to be happy, we want to be fulfilled. And part of that, of course, is doing those things positively that are going to be able to bring about what we're trying to achieve. But then there's the other side of it also, is to stop doing certain things that we are doing, and perhaps in the process of stopping, something else will take its place, better will take its place and fill that space. And I'd like to talk specifically one of those this evening. And I choose this one for two reasons. The first one is that it's important. It's important. And it's let's say we have a bad habit. In a sense, doing something positive, which is what we want to do, we want to change, so we do something positive, but those are often hard to do. It's, in other words, taking on a new habit or taking on a new direction or doing something new. It takes a lot of energy to do that and to get a new rhythm started. But on the other hand, it's also difficult to change things that we are doing and stop doing them. But yet it's a little bit, there's no magic formula needed necessarily. We just need to stop. Just stop doing it. And that takes time, but yet it's quite apparent. It's simple. There's no magic needed to it. Just stop. And then you find that in that, it allows space for something better to happen, and that's what we want to address tonight. And the second reason I chose this one is because somebody came up to me just a few days ago, and as it happened, I was trying to think, what am I going to talk about? And this evening, and this person came up to me, and is it a person who typically embodies a certain characteristic I want to mention this evening that we need to address within ourselves? And this is a person who's very intelligent, very sharp, and observant, and very dedicated to spiritual path, wants to make things better, and is in a position of some responsibility. And this person came up to me, and she was in a bit of a distress with herself. She was discouraged, and she was saying, "Jaya, what am I going to do? I've been trying to work on this for such a long time." And the problem she had was she was very, very, it's one of those persons, if you work with groups of people, that sometimes they have a sharp tongue, you might say. They're a little bit, they're critical, and they have a tendency to express their criticism to the world around themselves. But more than that, even if they can control that part of it and try to be diplomatic, their mind tends to be very critically minded in a negative way. And so this is something that Lord Krishna addresses very directly in the Bhagavad Gita, and what I don't want to talk about this evening. And it's from chapter 9, stanza 1, right at the beginning, right at the top of that chapter. Krishna says, speaking to Arjuna, he says, "To you who are free from the carping spirit, I shall now reveal wisdom sublime, grasping it with your mind and perceiving it by intuitive realization. You shall escape the evils of delusion." He goes right directly at it. And Swamiji would often speak to this topic, and when he would couple it with often with a quote from the Bible. And this is what he does in the Rays of the One Light. He couples from that quote that Jesus says, "Suffer the little children to come unto me, and forbid them not. For of such is the kingdom of heaven. And you could say, so I want to talk a little bit about this tendency of the mind to, it's carping spirit. And what is that? It means that carping spirit is that tendency to criticize, to react to what's going around you, and to express yourself in a critical way, in a negative way, unnecessarily oftentimes. Should have done that, could have done that, why would it be better than that, why are you doing that? That sort of an attitude, whether it's expressed or not, it's going through our mind. And it's actually, you might say, it's the opposite of what is said here in the Bible. To be from the to be free from the carping spirit means to be returned to a state of openness, trust, and the wonder of a child going out looking in the world, being in that spirit. But what the child lacks, of course, is doesn't have emotional maturity. So, but yet that childlikeness is what we want, not the childishness that sometimes is. And so, in a sense, it's that tendency we see in ourselves, others, that in ourselves, of, when a child, things don't go the way we want to. There's this tendency, things should be other than they are. And that's usually where it springs, this desire of want things to be different than they are. And we look at it and it doesn't please us. And it goes against what we want. And so what do children do? Well, they throw tantrums and they cry. Oh, and they get upset and they express themselves that way. But they get a little bit older, get to be teenagers maybe, and they express themselves. It turns into complaint, complaining. And then adults, that negative criticism, it turns into fault finding toward everything. Their neighbors, why are they like the way they are? The government, their place of work, the weather. And it doesn't really matter what it is. They find something wrong with the universe. And what happened, they find their criticisms basically is expressing this state of dissatisfaction, that they look out through that lens of criticism and they express themselves in that way. And this is basically, it's a sign of, well, this is what carping is. And really it's a sign of emotional immaturity to be that way, to the inability to accept gracefully and to be able to ride gracefully the ups and downs of life, rather than resisting them and complaining about them, tantrums, criticizing. And this tendency is such a very simple, basic thing, but to be able to address that and to be able to control that, for us as devotees, your life begins to change. And it's easy to identify, and maybe not so easy to change. And it's not really saying, holding the words in, it's the thought. It's the thought, that critical attitude that often comes from a person who's very intelligent, very perceptive, which are good qualities to have, to be able, it's like having a very sharp knife. And somebody who has a very sharp mind has a very sharp knife. But they start swinging that knife, and eventually they end up cutting themselves. And they create havoc in their environment. And basically what eventually happens is they find that other people, they keep their distance, because anybody who's swinging a sharp knife, you got to be careful. And people keep their distance. And they begin to wonder, you're waving this knife about, why are people, why can't I make friends? Why can't I hold on to good relationships? Why can't things go smoothly? Why is my life always in a certain state of tumult? And it's this lens that they've put on to view the world in terms of what should be rather than what is, and being able to accept it. And I think probably every one of us to some degree has this carping spirit, but to totally overcome it, as Krishna is implying to Arjuna, it's the mark, to be able to overcome it is the mark of a very spiritually developed person. And if we were to just take this one quality and be able to turn it around and control it, and to turn it, which naturally we control it, and a positive thing begins to come in and take its place. We become benevolent naturally. It's like nonviolence. We stop being violent in terms of our mental, which is, carping is a form of violence. It is that you overcome that violent spirit, and what happens? Benevolence begins to take its place, and benevolence is attractive. People come to something that's benevolent. They go away. You repel people when you're violent. And the carping spirit is a perfect expression of a violent attitude toward, you don't think of it as violent. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm just trying to correct you. You might justify it in that way. I'm trying to make the world better by seeing all its faults. And yeah, I mean, you can see the limitations, I hope, in that attitude, but it's a very big hurdle to overcome. And if we can do it, we can change ourselves. Very easy, and it's not that hard. Now, it is hard in a way. It's hard to control the mind, but we can control our behavior. In other words, in this case particularly, we can the voice, what we say verbally. So consequently, you have a negative habit. Yes, they're hard to stop, but it's in our power to do so. And there's not a magic formula. We just stop. And, sometimes this critical attitude is as, people justify themselves for having that. Says, well, I had to say something. That person is all wrong. They're doing the wrong thing. And I'm standing up for Dharma and by speaking truth. And that sounds very virtuous, but really, think about it. Is that really what we're trying to do? Let's be honest with ourselves. Look within and explore. What's our motivations? It's this tendency to react. I don't like it. We're usually, when we're carping, we're speaking from that element, that level, likes and dislikes. This is displeasing to me. I want it to change. I want it to be different. And it's good to want some things to be different. We don't want evil to prevail, but how we feel about it and how we're speaking, and that reactive tendency of the mind to change that what is, and to our likes and dislikes. And it's a clear expression, you could say. It's usually a clear expression of egotism. And we don't justify it, be honest with what is our motivation. It separates us from other people. And usually you'll find that person that's wielding a sharp knife like that, it separates them from other people. And when we have that tendency, the rest of the world just stands back. It's divisive. And it ends up poisoning. It becomes a habit in that way of thinking. Though ought to be this way, ought to be this way. When we see through the lens of negative criticism to the world around us, it begins to separate us. And we can't find happiness that way. And this shrinks us. And we find that things just don't work right. And so it is the opposite of expanding our sense of unity and embracing other people. We end up cutting with that knife, and we end up suffering. So implicit in this habit, this bad habit, is the thought, I could have done it better. And you start seeing the world like that. And so usually one of the first things to do is, instead of criticizing, is to just, zip it up and just be able to control that element of it first. Just stop that. And you find that little by little we begin to be able to substitute something positive. So and practically, when you have that negative attitude and carping spirit, you end up obstructing your ability to find constructive solutions. And so it doesn't mean that we're blind to the world's problems and the faults of other people. I can see people's faults. You can see people's faults, but it's responding to it in a measured way that actually is trying to be helpful, trying to be constructive, trying to be beneficial. Somebody asks you for your opinion. You have to be careful what you say, of course, but if you do respond to that, you have to think of those things. What is going to be helpful? and what's going to be helpful. And that attitude behind why you're saying something, why you're pointing out faults. And I think here's the important point. Krishna says this to Arjuna because Arjuna is free of this tendency, and because he's free of that tendency, Krishna can guide him. You see, that's the attitude of the disciple. You can't be a good disciple until you overcome that carping spirit, because you cannot receive proper guidance. The person, because you're in that reactive mode. And we close when we're not free of carping spirit, we close the door, and in the process of doing that, we impose our own attitudes and views on life. And I think all of us, to some degree, we fight this. And in my own life, I saw this tendency in myself, especially think of yourself as a teenager. You know everything when you're a teenager, and other people, your parents and elders, well, they just got to learn a little bit, but you're coming in with this gifted ability to see faults. And oftentimes you're clever enough to see that, and you not shy about expressing them. And I was like that when I was a teenager. And then you get into young adulthood and you hang on to those tendencies. And I looked on the world and I saw everything that was wrong with it. Soon enough, though, I realized that, well, yeah, I can see it's wrong, but what am I going to do about it? And come to it, being able to find solution. And I think if any of you have had children, and if you've worked with teenagers, it's this attitude that unfortunately some people never outgrow it. They just keep going with it. And it's basically emotional immaturity. And it becomes a habit and a way of looking at life. And so the question here we need to ask then is, well, okay, I can see those tendencies, and I can see that. What am I going to do about it? Well, the first thing is if you can recognize the fact that this tendency exists, you recognize that that's the first step. Well, okay, I see it's happening. I want to do something. And it hurts people. Ultimately, it's going to hurt myself. And the first thing is stop the verbalization of your criticism. And this is something everybody can do. Just zip it up. It's like typically parents will say to their kids, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say it. That's what you say to the teenager. Come on, just keep it to yourself. It's harder, of course. The thoughts behind it are harder. But if you stop the expression of it willy-nilly, that is the first big step. And then you can it begins to relax a little bit. And I think one of the, you might call it this, and this is how Swami Kriyananda said it. He says, go on a criticism fast. And I mean, one is a day. I'm not going to criticize anybody today or anything today. I'm just going to look at the world and I'm going to say, I'm going to accept it as it is, and I'm not going to criticize. I'm not going to fault find. Can you do it for an hour, a morning, a day? And then you can start expanding that to a week and more, just making a habit. No. And if you have and then I think the impulse that goes with that, if you see a problem, what's the solution? We could do this instead. And you begin to make that habit of turning that critical attitude, one, just not expressing it, it relaxes, and then trying to turn it into a positive direction by being solution oriented. And if you're in a situation, and this is people who tend to be critical they think they're being solution oriented. And so they offer their opinion about something with emotion and with attachment to their opinion often, or usually. And you might ask yourself, before you start sharing verbally your solutions, your great solutions in other people's business, ask yourself, is this my business? Do I need to say something here? Because oftentimes, if you work in a social environment with other people, things are happening, something happens, and you just got to express your opinion. You got to say your piece. And oftentimes, oh, this is that way, that's that way. Is it really your place to be saying something? Just hold back. If you're asked, well, yeah, okay, then you can share it. But is it necessary for me to say something? Is it necessary for me to add to this? And this is a habit. It's just a habit of, I need to be heard. Is my input been solicited or my opinion wanted? Why am I commenting about this? Is it necessary? Think about it before. Pause there. And then, of course, if you hear other people and you want to, something offends you, you don't like it, give the other person the benefit of the doubt. You don't know what their intention was, what their meaning was. And if you can just put that little bit of pause into that reactive process and stop the expression, and, there aren't now, this is not to say there are not times when you need to say something, yes, but the habit, you could say, of just expressing, and usually oftentimes in criticizing, being critical. And if it is your duty, wait until, this is something that Swami Ananda said. He says, sometimes it is our duty to say something. He says, but if you feel it's your duty to say something, wait until the desire to speak subsides. You know how it is? Somebody, I got to say something, and you want to do it right now. Wait until that feeling of necessity and desire to speak recedes, and then speak. But consider what it is you want to say. Don't just say it off the top of your head. Ask yourself, and if you're speaking with another person, what does this other person need to hear? Not what I want to say. You see, this is the thing. As we say, I want to say this, I want to say that. Is it useful? What does the other person need to hear from you that might be helpful? Look for something that will benefit that person. In other words, this is saying this. You might say that you could say it's conscious. Being aware of how you speak and the tone you use in communicating makes so much difference. In criticism, it's that tone, the communicating. Is it pleasant? Is it effective? Kindly, thoughtfully? Does it benefit? All of those things go into conscious speech, but rarely do people really speak consciously. Intonation, that's what we want, to be able to consciously say something that has been considered, is what the effect might be, and rather than just the criticism. Now, of course, I'll say again, with the criticism starts with the thought impulse, that tendency to react. It's a reactive thing. And carping spirit tends to be reactive. And what we want to do is we want to control, in yoga, we have to control the reactive process. So you could say a person who's been able to demonstrate, as Arjuna did, the control of that carping spirit, he has basically controlled his reactive process, and before it even got to the point of speech. And the other thing is, we tend to criticize and to insert ourselves oftentimes where we think it's going to be helpful, but really, you have to let other people make their own decisions and mistakes. And I think it's helpful to have a little live and let live attitude. And you don't have to like everything around you. You don't have to like what other people are doing, but let it be. It's not necessarily your concern or point of view. And I guess, again, it's not feeling that, being able to accept things as they are and being able to work with them. And I think sometimes people have this tendency to criticize because it's an emotional defense mechanism. It's a need to reinforce our own opinions about something because maybe they've been attacked. Maybe somebody said something and, I didn't like that. So what's happening is our views, our opinions are being attacked. And so we criticize as a defense mechanism. We're not able to accept the fact that, other people are disagreeing with me. They have different views. So you could say it reflects a lack of self-confidence when you react that way. Maybe we fear to be wrong. and we lack confidence, and so we criticize as a defense mechanism to protect ourselves. Or maybe we lack trust. We don't trust others. We don't, and we're not open, and consequently we fear criticism. We fear others are going to criticize us, or maybe we criticize ourselves. And so there's all sorts of reasons we have to, but we can't always understand the reasoning behind it. But we can see the expression, the carping spirit expressed outwardly is where we have to start. And I think eventually, if speaking about trust, and the world is going to go on, and we have to trust that we trust others, we trust God, and let go of that need to constantly feel we have to assert ourselves and be in control of the situation. And I think if you can create or find and be in try to choose a social environment that allows you to mutually trust that everybody's intentions are positive. And that's the nice thing about, I live at Ananda Village. I'm staying at Ananda Village now. That I don't agree with everybody, what's going on, but I do trust that everybody's trying to do the best thing possible. And consequently, if I trust that people are beneficial or trying to do a good thing, why criticize? I might have a different point of view, but I don't have to be critical of them. And sometimes you can have multiple views. And I think if you allow for that attitude to creep into you, you find that you start to bring harmony to your situation. You find that other people, they're not backing off from you, and they start to say, hey, we can work together. You like that, I like this, it's great. We can each of us contribute. And in the end, if we criticize because we think that's wrong, you might say if that taken from too much of a personal view, it's really we're saying on a deeper level, I don't trust God God is truth. I don't trust God to be in control of the situation. Ultimately, we have to have that trust on the spiritual path that truth will prevail in the end. I have to be an instrument, yes, when it's my position to be an instrument. I have to assume responsibility, but I can only do so much. So this comes into the whole philosophy of Nishkam Karma, being able to do my best, express truth as well as I can, but not be attached to the results of that. I can only be attached to me acting properly. And if things are not conforming to my likes and dislikes, I can accept that. And I can accept multiple points of view. Another thing that you could say is watch your sense of humor. Don't be sarcastic in your sense of humor. In other words, be lighthearted, but don't have a cynical or sarcastic attitude to your lightness of heart. We want to cultivate that lightness of heart, but it needs to be childlike enjoyment of life. You could sort of say, take it from that way. And, if you do have to offer criticism and it's your position to do that, try to offer it lovingly. And as Masters would say, he says, offer criticism lovingly and sparingly. And he says, if you must offer criticism, do it with kindness and only when necessary. Now, I read something else once when I was thinking about this topic. I was looking to see what did Master say about it. And he says, leave your constructive criticism as a seed for others to cultivate if they choose. Because, you offer people advice, and how often do they really take it? And if they don't take it, you don't criticize them. You've offered the seed, and it's now their free will if they choose to follow it or not. If they don't, okay. And then he said another interesting that he says, avoid repeating it more than twice. And so consequently, you offer advice to somebody, they don't do it. You offer it again, Don't do it more than twice, and then because then you could, you're in a sense you're intruding. And I think too, the other thing we have to consider is self-criticism. We have to be kind to ourselves too. And because you find people that have a critical carping attitude toward other people, oftentimes deep down, who are they criticizing really? They're looking at the world, they're criticizing it on a deep level. They may not realize it, but they're being self-critical as well. There's a certain lack of ease in life for a person who's very critical of others, because ultimately there's an unrest within themselves. And if we're that type, we can't relax easily with the world, and we're critical of that. And we know on a deep level this isn't right. And that usually stems from something unresolved in ourselves. So if you find yourself in that carping spirit, look within. And sometimes you're going to, you'll be criticized, and others, you have to be learned to ride with that. And sometimes it's going to be unfair. This is Swami was saying, he says, life is not always fair. In life, sometimes you will be criticized. He says, but it's the mark of a true disciple, true devotees, that you can maintain a positive, joyful spirit and accept unfair criticism gracefully. You don't need to react to it. Yes, sometimes you have to correct it, but Swami would always say, "Somebody, just take it. Just take it. It's a mark of honor, you might say, to be persecuted by others unfairly. It's not fun to do that. We shouldn't invite it, but nevertheless, if it happens, and it does from time to time, take it gracefully. God knows the truth. You know the truth, and that's the important thing. So it can be a good, calm acceptance, you might say, of the slings and arrows of outrageous misfortune. It's good for our humility too, to just see if we can accept those sorts of things. So keep these thoughts in mind. That stop, reflect, and then stop it if the energy is going in the wrong direction. And as you do that, slowly the mind itself will follow in time. And the mind will follow if you try, if you put energy into it. But if you stop the outward expression, you'll find that in a little bit of time, you'll begin, and then mentally start looking for the positive side. You'll see that your life will change. Your magnetism will change. With your change of magnetism, your environment will begin to change and follow suit. And we begin, most importantly, when we have that quality, we begin to be open to guidance. God can't come in if we're always projecting out our likes and dislikes or our critical attitudes. Our attitude will begin to change, and we find ourselves being intuitively guided in the right way. So take these thoughts, keep it in mind, and I think you'll find that our lives can greatly benefit from this very, I'm saying simple. It's not all that, I think it is simple. It's not necessarily easy. So keep it in mind. So let's Tushar, I think I'm going to invite you to play, yes? And let's do Arati, and we'll share a blessing, and we'll conclude our satsang. Okay. invite you to take the lights into your consciousness that you might be purified and blessed by the Masters. Om, Om, Om. Let's now raise our hands and let us send these blessings out into the world. Om, Om, Om. And let us conclude with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, great masters of self-realization, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashai, Swami Sri Yukteswar, beloved Guruji, Paramahansa Yogananda, saints of all religion, we humbly bow to you all. Divine Mother, help me overcome all limitations. Help me overcome preoccupation with my little self. Help me open my heart to be able to spread joy to all. Fill me with that joy to overflowing. May my love flow out to all souls. May I share thee with all. May I be one with thee always. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om Guru.